You know that feeling on a date when your brain won't shut off? You're scanning for red flags, you're trying to figure out if the other person is worth your time, and you know they're doing the same thing to you, and that's exhausting. And you know what? That's not even dating. That's more like auditioning. Almost everybody does it. And if you have a disability, the pressure to prove that your word choosing is even worse. It cranks up the whole thing even higher. But there's a completely different approach to dating, and that one leads to a lot more good dates and way less self doubt. So picture the scene. You're sitting across someone, asking question, nodding along, but it's not really a conversation. It's a job interview disguised in a date's clothes. You've got a mental checklist running in the back of your mind. Red flag, green flag, deal breaker, and you're hyper aware that they've got one too. They're scanning you too. So you're doing two things at once. You're managing your own presentation and you're tracking their responses, their reaction to yourself. You're watching yourself through their eyes while also trying to evaluate them. That's not connection, that's surveillance. And you walk away drained, not because you had fun, but because you were performing the entire time. And underneath all of that, there's usually another layer running. Could this person be the one? That question sounds innocent, but it pulls you completely out of the room. Your mind is already 3 dates ahead, already stress testing the relationship, already imagining how it would work or why it would not work, while they're sitting there telling you about something that actually matters to them. But you're not present. You're solving a problem that doesn't exist yet. So here's the irony that no one tells you about. The harder you try to assess compatibility in that 1 hour, the less compatible energy you actually bring to the table. You're tense, you're guarded, you're performing. That's not the version of you that they're going to fall for. Yes, I know, compatibility matters. Nobody is saying that you should ignore it. But real compatibility reveals itself over several dates, not in that one rush hour where you're both on your best managed behavior. My now fiance and I had 3 dates before I nearly ended it all. I was convinced we didn't work. 9 years later, we're getting married in 2 months. I look back at that moment, it's almost funny. If I had trusted the audition verdict from that third date, I would have walked away from the relationship that actually fits me and makes me happy. The real cause of this pattern is not the bad dates. It's the good ones that you don't give enough time to become what they're capable of becoming. We want someone to look past the first impression, to give us time and to see who we actually are. So we have to be willing to extend that grace to the other person too. But there's another layer to this, one that is sneakier and honestly harder to catch yourself doing. It's not just that you're watching them, you're also desperately trying to read whether they choose you or not, scanning their face for micro expressions, analyzing every pause, every glance away or towards you. And you're usually wrong anyway because people are complicated and you're reading them through the filter of your own anxiety. This is where openness and people pleasing get all tangled up. You say yes to things you don't really want. You laugh at jokes that don't land. You soften your opinions because somewhere underneath it all, you're terrified of being dismissed. And that's not being open, that's auditioning for approval. So if you have a disability, this can hit even harder. There's an extra voice that says that you need to compensate, to be charming, so easy, so low maintenance that they forget to factor in the things that make you less desirable. So you overperform, you hide pieces of yourself, you try to contort into whatever shape you think that they want, and in doing that you lose the only thing that makes real connection possible, which is your actual self. And there is the math that no one talks about. Auditioning mode dramatically increases the numbers of bad dates you have because you're not showing up as yourself. Even if you do get a second date, it's built on performance, and performances are exhausting to maintain. Over time, it chips away at your confidence, and every date that doesn't go somewhere starts to feel like a verdict. Not a mismatch, not bad timing, but proof that you were not good enough. You start showing up smaller, more guarded, and less willing to risk anything real. And then, completely by accident, I stumbled into something that completely changed how I understood all of it. Years ago, I landed in a big city for an internship that would last 8 months. And after that, I'd have to move on. That timeline made the whole find a life partner project feel pointless because I would have to move. So I just stopped running it. I decided to date because dating was its own goal in itself. It was something to do. I was no longer hunting for someone permanent in that city. That small shift in framing did something that I did not expect. Without the long term evaluation pressure sitting on every interaction, I stopped managing myself so carefully. And I wasn't rehearsing answers in my head while they were still talking anymore. I wasn't tracking whether their job, their values, their weekend plans fit into my imagined future. I was just there in the room with another person, really curious about who they actually were. Then something unlocked. I noticed that I could be funny even if I wasn't monitoring whether I was coming across as funny. I could be honest even if I was not calculating whether honesty would cost me the date. There was a version of me in those conversations that I had not been able to access before because I'd always had too much riding on the outcome to actually show up for the moment. The surprise was that it felt better, it worked better. The conversation went somewhere real, and I laughed more, and not the polite kind, real laughter. And I connected with people in a way that actually felt was about them and not what I needed them to be. And dating without the audition was not a consolation prize, it was just genuinely more enjoyable. When I eventually settled somewhere permanent, I kept the same approach, not because I had given up on finding someone lasting, but because going back to the old way felt like I was putting on wet clothes. The results had been too clear to ignore. More good dates, fewer draining ones. And when a bad date happened, it just landed differently. It was just two people who didn't click, not a referendum on my value. You shrug it off and you move on. It doesn't follow you home, and you don't take it personal because it's not. So, what does this actually look like in practice? It starts by changing what you're there to do. The goal is not to be chosen. The goal is to practice connecting with another human being in real time, right there across the table. That reframe sounds small, but it changes everything about how you sit, how you listen, how you respond. Connection means being present to the actual person that's in front of you and not some kind of hypothetical future you've been constructing since you matched because you swiped the right way. When you're in audition mode, you're not really talking to them. You're talking to the idea of them and you're running it against your checklist. Practicing connection, it means letting them be a real person with contradictions and weird opinions and things that surprise you and staying curious about that, about them, instead of trying to file them into a box, a category. Openness is not about agreeing with everything they say. That would be just people pleasing with better PR. But real openness is showing up as yourself and letting their reaction be the information. If being the real you makes them lean in, good. If it doesn't, that's also good because now you know that you might not be a match and you didn't waste months finding that out. Either way, you're not auditioning, you're just being honest and seeing what happens. When you stop trying to decode what they're thinking and you start paying attention to how you actually feel in their presence, then the data gets useful. Are you comfortable? Are you energized? Or are you relieved when the check finally comes in? That's what matters. Your experience of them, not just their experience of you. The confidence that builds from this is not the kind that comes from being chosen a lot. It's quieter than that. It's knowing that you can sit across from someone and be fully yourself and handle whatever comes back. A bad date stops being evidence of a flaw in you. It's just two people who didn't fit. And that's normal, temporary, and completely survivable, okay? That's what reclaiming power looks like. Not a theory, not a mindset poster, just the way you sit across from someone and present yourself instead of performing or being anxious. Auditioning shrinks you, but practicing connection lets you actually show up. Remember, the goal of dating is not to find your life partner, although it can be a very good start and it might happen over time. But the goal of dating is always to learn how to show up and make that date be as best as possible while letting another person contribute to it as well. If you'd like to have more tools on how to prepare your presence and even debrief after a date, I have a second video that is a sequel to this one in our reinvention lab that you will find in our school community. You will find a link to all this in the description of this video. I'll see you there.